would you prefer hydrofluoric acid or sandblasting on the surface of nanoceramic materials? And would you suggest the use of ultrasonic cleaning afterwards? Now, first of all, of course, we would have to have a discussion exactly what you mean by nanoceramic materials. I'm assuming that you're talking about the composites that are used in CAD CAMs. These materials are basically composite, and therefore I would not suggest using hydrofluoric acid, even though they have glass particles embedded in them. I think the hydrofluoric acid degrades the resin part. So while I would suggest sandblasting them, anything, I'd sandblast everything, but don't forget, you have to sandblast rather gently. You're not trying to, you're basically cleaning the surface and just slightly roughening it. You don't want to take much of the material or any of the material away. However, let me say that there is one material called Enamic. I have to say it's a trade name. Enamic is a kind of hybrid material. It's a hybrid between polymer and basically feldspathic porcelain. This material does need to be etched with hydrofluoric acid. And I would suggest that you go to the manufacturer's homepage and do the research there. Exactly how long you should etch it and with what kind of, what strength of hydrofluoric acid. But the ones that are composite, that are mainly composite, I would not really use, and I don't know that they really suggest using hydrofluoric acid. But sandblasting, yes, but gently sandblasting. The next question is, do you both sandblast and use a cleaner, such as Ivoclean, on the zirconia surface? Yes, definitely. Zirconia needs to be sandblasted for a number of reasons. The greatest of these is that remember that what I mentioned was that the phosphates need to be cleaned off. If you try it in the mouth, these phospholipids that are in the saliva will adhere to the zirconia surface, and therefore they will block the function of the primer, which is MDP. So you must get rid of the phosphates, otherwise this will not have a good effect. And one of the ways you can get rid of it is by sandblasting. Now, the reason I would use something as Ivoclean or some such similar cleaning fluid is that you're never sure that you have cleaned all the surface of the zirconia surface with the sandblasting. You can't see it really. So that's just an insurance policy. So I always use one of the cleaners, and Ivoclean would be a good one. But there are others. So please use both. The next question is, can we use Ivoclean for cleaning lithium disilicate surfaces or polymer surfaces too? The answer is sort of equivocal, because there's this is not really made for that. It's really made for zirconia surfaces. However, I know that, for instance, Ivoclar, who has been up until now at least producing most of the lithium disilicate or all of the lithium disilicate, there is a study done that says that using Ivoclean on a lithium disilicate actually does promote the bond, shear bond strength, I think. And of course, it's not a lot. It doesn't dramatically change as it does with the zirconium surface, but it did improve the bonding to the lithium disilicate of the resin somewhat. I don't know about polymer surfaces, to be honest with you. I would imagine that it wouldn't hurt and it could clean that surface. But that is, I don't know really that. But I do know about lithium disilicate, and it might help there. The next question is, my lab etches the lithium disilicate crowns prior to sending them to me. Do I still need to etch the crowns prior to cementation, or in that case, then can use Ivoclean only thing? Yes, you don't need to re-etch because you might be over-etching them. And so if your lab etches, which I don't do, but if your lab etches them for you, I think, yes, you could use Ivoclean to clean it. I also sometimes use then phosphoric acid. Don't forget, we're talking about lithium disilicate. We're not talking about, of course, zirconia. Please don't get those two mixed up. Lithium disilicate, yes, would benefit, I think, if it was prior etched by the lab. Then once you've tried it in and it might be contaminated, then you could use Ivoclean. And like I said, I also use phosphoric acid then sometimes to clean it. Actually, both, and then put them in a water bath, so an ultrasonic bath with alcohol. Then there's another question: any opinion or protocol on immediate dentin bonding, which is some people would say called immediate dentin sealing? Yes. I don't know that I mentioned this in the lecture. I do immediate dentin sealing whenever possible. So in other words, immediate dentin sealing means that once you've prepped your tooth and you're ready for the impression taking, that you immediately bond the dentin and surface. You can use a number of protocols for doing that, and you can use a number of bonds to do that. In other words, you could use a 4th or 5th generation. You could do a self-etch type material, 6th or 7th generation, or you could use the universal bond. That is what I use, the universal bond. I would again etch the enamel first, and then you could either do a full etch of the total etch of the bond of the dentin, or you could do the self etch. I think the self etch is better in this case because you're going for a long-term sealing. What you want to do is develop a hybrid layer. One thing you want to be certain about is, and very careful, is that you want to clean off the bonding material off the margins. Okay, you want it because this material will flow. You're thinning it out, but there is still a layer that could be on the margins. So you want to clean the margins before you take your impression. And then at the time of cementation, you don't need to bond actually. What I do is I do etch the enamel part again. And of course, before I do that, I will again freshen up this bond with sandblasting, but very, very gentle in this, especially in this case. Okay, I hope that answers your question. But whenever possible, please use immediate dentin sealing, because there has been actually a lot of science behind that you get a better bond if you seal immediately after you've cut the dentin, and not weeks later or days later when you're cementing and you may have contaminated that surface. The next question that we have is, do we need to etch porcelain veneer before bonding? Yes. All of the materials you would be using for porcelain veneers, and there are a number of them. You could use feldspathic porcelain, you could do a lucite glass ceramic, or a lithium disilicate glass ceramic, or there's the newer zirconium altered lithium disilicate. All of those materials need to be etched. The ones that don't need to be etched would be zirconium. Okay, I don't know that you would use zirconium for veneers. At least we're not doing that yet. Another material that you might use is somebody that the question before was, if you're using these nano ceramic materials. I don't use them for veneers, but those probably you would not want to etch. Thank you from Dr. Moon from New Zealand for your kind words. And Professor Seike, the same. Thank you for your kind words. In zirconia adhesion, can we something else other than sandblast like hydrofluoric acid in zirconia adhesion? No, if I understand this right, if you don't use hydrofluoric acid for zirconia, we cannot etch at this time zirconia. Remember from that, maybe from the lecture, from the slide with the blue and the yellow. I don't know if that sticks in your mind. That all the materials that have the blue, which is the glass phase, those can be etched. But zirconia doesn't have a glass phase, so it cannot be etched, at least not with hydrofluoric acid. They're working on that. There's several ways to get a sort of rough surface micromechanical retention on zirconia, but it's not practical, and it hasn't really worked very well yet. And so this is not something we can do maybe in the future. But hydrofluoric will not do anything at the strength that we're using it. It won't do anything for zirconia, but sandblasting is important for the reasons that I've already outlined. Next question is, what is the difference between MDP and silane coupling agent? It just has a different chemical formula, mainly in the inorganic part, okay? Because, of course, there's a phosphate group that's attaching to the zirconia, but on the silane, when we use the silane, it is a very similar molecule, but the coupling group is different. It's carboxylate, I think, and because it is attaching to a different material. It is the silicate in the glass ceramics. So that's the main difference. But it is similar in that it's a two-headed molecule. After sandblasting of the tooth, do we need to rinse and clean with water? Thank you again. This is somebody thanking me from Dr. Alexander. I don't want to use last names. After sandblasting the tooth, do we need to rinse and clean with water? Yes, please. You want to get all those particles off, both the tooth and the restoration. Of course, when you're doing the tooth, you just need to rinse off with a lot of water. If you're using a loupe, the best way you can actually see the particles and keep doing it until you get them all off. The next question: instead of using so many step protocols, is there any shorter way to reduce the step? How do you think that Tokiyama's universal bond is this Tokiyama universal bond work as a primer to help reduce the steps? Yes, I understand. Yeah, there are many steps in some of these protocols. One thing in general I would caution you is not skimp on the steps if you can. You realize that we're dentists. What dentistry is a step-by-step process, and each step usually is important. And if you don't do the step correctly, or it doesn't work, then everything down the line suffers for that, and of course the final result will suffer. Now, as far as shortening this, most steps, I don't know which step you're talking about, but most of them are not to be reduced. The one thing that you might think of is, and I think maybe when you're asking about the Tokiyama universal bond, does it work as a primer? Yes, in certain instances, because yes, it does have the coupling agent in it. And there are many bonding materials that have a coupling agent in it. In other words, they will have MDP, they might even have silane in it. Almost all the bonding materials and some of the cements have MDP already in them. However, And again, this is a point of controversy, and you're just going to look in the literature, and it may develop with time. Some people will say that you can use these; you don't have to have an extra step um, coating the restoration surface with something like MDP if you're doing zirconia, or with silane. Because that it is already in the material that you may be using in terms of the cement or the bonding, the adhesive. Again, I think I pointed this out, that whenever you put too many things, too many chemicals into one bottle, or then you tend to lessen the quality of that. And some people will agree with me, some people will not agree with me. Some people say it's not necessary to do it separately. I do it separately because it's not doesn't take very long, and I think it just works better. That if you add the MDP or the silane separately, depending on the material you're bonding, I think that works better. But again, it will be up to you. All the other steps I think that I've outlined, you really must follow. Okay, so again, the Tokuyama is an excellent material. I use it myself, but I still add a separate priming step into that. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming. So with that, I think we can finish. I hope everything was helpful, and that I know it's not clear to everything, because it's just not clear in terms of the literature. There are different points of view. Many people will say different things. Some of them are just slightly different, and some of them are radically different. You have to be careful that the ones that are radically different from what I've outlined may be off the mark. So please do your homework. I think that's the best way the best thing that I can tell you, and do the step by step very diligently and precisely, and that will lead to much more success. So again, I want to thank the Dental Tribune, or Dental Tribune Study Club, and I would like to thank Tokuyama for their support, and I thank you for tuning in and affording me this opportunity. Thank you very much.